Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Sometimes the most painful goodbyes are the ones that never get spoken out loud. You just wake up one day and realize you've been holding on to someone who already let go. And in that moment, you face one of life's hardest truths. To heal, you must learn to emotionally detach, not out of hate, but out of self-respect. We think letting go means we stopped caring, but that's not true. Letting go simply means we're choosing peace over chaos, healing over hurting, and truth over illusion. Most people never learn this art. They stay stuck, replaying the same conversations, reliving the same pain, waiting for a closure that may never come. But you're not most people. You're here because your heart is ready to stop bleeding for what's already gone. So, how do you emotionally detach from someone who once felt like home? How do you stop loving them in silence without losing yourself in the process? Let's walk through 5 powerful rules. Not to erase your feelings, but to reclaim your power. Because healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering without breaking anymore. We spend so much of our lives trying not to feel. We build walls around our hearts, not because we don't care, but because we care too much. And when something or someone breaks us open, when love turns into loss or closeness turns into silence, we panic. We try to rush our healing. We want to skip the middle, the messy, the ache that comes when your soul realizes something beautiful is over. But here's the truth no one wants to sit with. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You cannot move on if you keep pretending you're okay. And you can't detach from someone emotionally if your heart is still buried under all the things you never let yourself grieve. So many of us try to outthink our emotions. We analyze, rationalize, and spiritualize our pain, anything to avoid sitting in it. We say, I'm fine, I've accepted it, I've let go. But deep down, there's a quiet storm still raging inside us, because we never allowed ourselves to fully feel what happened. To detach emotionally doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means allowing every suppressed feeling to come up, the sadness, the anger, the confusion, the longing, and giving them space to breathe. When we do that, something sacred happens. The pain begins to lose its power. I remember a woman sharing how she carried the weight of a love that had ended years ago. She kept herself busy, new job, new routines, new people, but the emptiness followed her everywhere. One evening, she sat down and played an old song that reminded her of him. And for the first time, she didn't fight the tears. She didn't try to stop them. She cried until her whole body shook. She said it felt like breaking, but also like breathing again. That night wasn't the end of her pain. It was the beginning of her healing. That's what it means to feel before you let go. It's not about dramatizing the pain. It's about dignifying it. It's about saying, yes, this mattered. Yes, I loved deeply. Yes, I was hurt. Because grief, in its purest form, is love with nowhere to go. When we deny our emotions, they don't disappear. They just find new places to hide. They become exhaustion, irritation, anxiety, or numbness. We scroll through our phones. We overwork, we overthink, anything to keep from feeling that ache in our chest. But healing never comes from distraction, it comes from honesty. Sometimes emotional detachment isn't about closing your heart, it's about opening it just long enough to let the pain move through. To sit with it. To name it. To cry over what could have been without needing it to return. Because only then can the heart unclench and make space for peace again. Here's something no one teaches us. Courage isn't found in staying strong. It's found in breaking gracefully. It's found in admitting that something hurt you, that you missed someone, that you tried and it didn't work out. There is strength in saying, I love deeply, but now I must love myself enough to let go. But every emotion you've been avoiding is a messenger. Your sadness isn't weakness. It's proof that you cared. Your anger isn't bitterness. It's a boundary that was crossed. Your confusion isn't failure. It's your heart learning what's true. When you allow yourself to feel all of this, you stop being afraid of your own depth. You begin to trust that no feeling can destroy you. It can only transform you. So sit with your heartbreak. Write about it. Cry about it. Pray through it. Let your emotions have their moment, but don't let them have your life. Feel them fully. Then release them gently. There will come a day, not all at once, but slowly, when you'll wake up and realize the heaviness isn't there anymore. You'll hear that song again, and it won't sting. You'll think of their name, and it won't make you flinch. Because when you allow yourself to feel everything before letting go, your heart eventually does the one thing it was created to do. It heals. So if you're standing at that crossroads right now, holding on with one hand and trying to heal with the other, please remember this. You do not have to rush your recovery. You just have to be honest with your heart. Let the tears come. Let the ache speak. Let it all rise to the surface. Because feeling everything doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. And when you finally let it go, not because you forced yourself to, but because you felt it all and made peace with it, you'll understand that emotional detachment was never about forgetting them. It was about remembering yourself. When you love someone deeply, it's easy to start confusing connection with negotiation. You find yourself explaining your worth to someone who stopped listening long ago. You keep waiting for them to change, to choose you, to finally see what you've always brought to the table. You tell yourself, if I just love harder, if I just prove myself more, maybe they'll understand. But love that requires proof isn't love, it's survival. There comes a point when your heart grows tired of fighting for something that was never meant to be earned. You realize that you've been having the same argument in your mind, defending your feelings, excusing their silence, rationalizing their distance. You replay conversations trying to find the moment when it started slipping away, as if understanding the fall will somehow reverse it. But deep down, you know the truth. You've been negotiating for someone's love, and it's costing you your peace. Emotional detachment begins when you stop bargaining for affection. It begins the moment you stop chasing validation from someone who only values you when it's convenient. You can't build love by begging for attention. You can't sustain connection by constantly explaining why you deserve to be treated right. The heart isn't a courtroom. You don't need to make a case to be loved. This is where courage enters the story. Because walking away from someone you love doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you finally accepted the reality that love shouldn't hurt this much. Love should make you feel safe, not small. It should bring peace, not anxiety. It should be mutual, not one person giving their all while the other takes without returning. There's a kind of silence that becomes louder than words. The silence of neglect, of effort unreturned. You start noticing the imbalance. You notice how you're always the one initiating, always the one fixing, always the one trying to keep something alive that's already slipping away. You try to convince yourself that they're just busy, that they still care, that they'll come back when they're ready. But love shouldn't feel like waiting in an empty room. The hardest truth to face is that sometimes people don't lack love for you. They lack the capacity to meet you at the depth you deserve. And no amount of explaining will change that. You can pour your heart out. You can cry, you can apologize for things that weren't your fault. But if someone isn't ready to meet you in emotional honesty, your effort will only exhaust you. Emotional detachment isn't about giving up on love. It's about giving up on convincing. It's about realizing that the moment you have to beg for attention, you've already lost yourself in the process. You don't need to chase what's already yours. Real love doesn't make you question your value. It confirms it. I once heard a story about a woman who spent years trying to fix a relationship that was built on promises but not consistency. Every time she tried to walk away, he'd say just enough to pull her back. He never changed, just reset the cycle. And she'd start again, believing that this time it would be different. One day, sitting alone after another fight, she finally asked herself a question she'd been avoiding. What if love isn't supposed to feel like convincing someone to stay? That single question changed everything. She didn't leave because she stopped loving. She left because she realized she couldn't keep loving him without losing herself. That's what this rule is about. It's the sacred act of reclaiming your emotional energy from people who thrive on taking it without reciprocating. It's about learning to stand in your worth without demanding that someone else validate it. When you stop negotiating for love, you begin to understand that peace is the highest form of intimacy. You start saying no more often, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You stop answering calls that only come when they're lonely. You stop accepting apologies that aren't backed by changed behavior. You stop shrinking yourself to fit inside someone's limited version of love. Because once you know your value, you stop offering discounts. And then something beautiful happens. Your silence becomes your boundary. Your absence becomes your answer. The energy you once used to chase becomes the energy you now use to heal. You rediscover the power of walking away, not to punish, but to protect. You see, emotional detachment isn't about building walls. It's about closing doors that lead nowhere. It's about realizing that not everyone is meant to walk with you to the next chapter, and that's okay. Some people are lessons, not lifetimes. So stop negotiating, stop pleading. Stop watering a garden that refuses to bloom. The love that's meant for you will never make you beg to be seen. It will never ask you to trade your dignity for belonging. It will arrive with clarity, not confusion. Until then, stand in your truth. Because the moment you stop negotiating for someone's love, you finally start receiving your own. There's a moment after every heartbreak when the noise begins to quiet down, when the phone stops buzzing, when the familiar voice fades into silence, and when the memories begin to echo louder than anything else. You tell yourself you've moved on, that you're stronger now, but then a song plays, or a smell lingers, or a random photo appears on your screen, and suddenly you're back there again, standing in the same memories you swore you left behind. That's the thing about emotional attachment. It doesn't end when the person leaves, it lingers in your thoughts, your routines, and the invisible spaces they used to occupy. You might delete the photos, block their number, or stop visiting the places you went together, but their presence lives rent-free in your mind, whispering, reminding, replaying. And the hardest part, you don't realize how much space they take up until you finally try to reclaim it. Emotional detachment begins in the mind long before it shows up in your actions. The mind holds on to patterns, to comfort, to familiarity. When you've shared so much with someone, your brain learns to associate their name, their face, even their absence, with emotional meaning. So every thought becomes a tug, a pull toward something that no longer exists. Reclaiming that space means rewiring the way your heart and mind communicate. It means consciously interrupting the thoughts that keep you stuck in the past and replacing them with new energy, new stories, new meaning. It's not easy. You'll have days when you think you've healed, when you can laugh, breathe, and feel light again. And then something tiny will trigger you. That's not weakness, it's memory doing its job. The goal isn't to erase them. It's to make peace with the fact that they'll always be a small part of your story, but no longer the author of your thoughts. Think of your mind like a home. For a long time, this person lived there. Their laughter in one room, their promises in another, their absence in every corner. When they leave, you don't burn the house down, you redecorate. You open the windows. You clear the dust. You replace what was theirs with what's yours again. That's how you reclaim mental space, not by destroying your history, but by redesigning your present. There's power in rituals of release. Write their name on a piece of paper and let the wind take it. Journal your unsaid words, not to send them, but to stop carrying them. Delete the messages that keep you anchored to the past. Clean your space. Move things around. Every physical act becomes a symbolic one, a reminder that you are no longer living in the shadow of what once was. Sometimes the hardest part is the silence that follows. You'll want to fill it. You'll want to check their page, read old texts, search for something, anything that makes you feel connected again. But healing happens in that silence. That's where your soul begins to rebuild. It's where you start realizing that peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the presence of stillness. You'll also start noticing how often your mind drifts toward them. In the car, before bed, when something good or bad happens. That's okay. Every time it does, gently pull your focus back. Ask yourself, what can I give my attention to instead? What deserves my energy right now? The more you redirect your focus, the more your mind learns that it doesn't have to orbit around that person anymore. I remember a man once saying that after his breakup, he would still wake up and instinctively reach for his phone to text her. Good morning. It had become a habit of love. When he realized she wasn't there anymore, he started texting himself instead, simple affirmations like, "You're doing better today," or "You're learning to breathe again." At first, it felt silly, but over time, that simple shift turned into self-connection. He stopped expecting love to arrive from the outside and began cultivating it from within. That's what reclaiming space looks like, turning the energy you once gave away into energy that now nourishes you. Healing is not about forgetting them. It's about remembering who you were before them and who you're becoming after. It's about realizing that the power they once had over your emotions was borrowed, not owned. You get to decide what stays in your mind and what leaves. You get to choose which memories serve your growth and which ones no longer deserve your attention. When you start reclaiming that space, you'll feel a shift, a quiet strength returning to your chest, a lightness you forgot you could feel. The thoughts that used to haunt you will lose their grip. The memories that used to sting will soften. And one day you'll think of them without pain, without anger, without longing, just gratitude for what you learned and peace for what you released. Because that's what real detachment feels like. Not forgetting someone, but no longer giving them the power to live inside your head. The space they once occupied becomes sacred again. A space for new dreams, new peace, new beginnings. And in that stillness, you'll realize that what you were trying to get back was never them. It was yourself. There comes a point in healing when you stop asking, "How do I get over them?" and start asking, "Who am I without them?" That's where the real transformation begins. Because emotional detachment isn't just about letting someone go. It's about rebuilding the parts of you that forgot how to exist without their presence. It's about remembering that your life is still yours to live, even when someone you loved deeply is no longer beside you. When you build a life that doesn't need them to feel full, you stop depending on their validation to feel seen. You stop waiting for their messages to feel wanted. You stop using their love as proof that you're enough. Instead, you start rediscovering your own heartbeat, the rhythm that existed long before they arrived, and the one that will continue long after they've gone. There's something powerful about rebuilding. It's not fast and it's not clean. It's messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes painfully slow. But it's also holy work. Because what you're really doing is reclaiming your wholeness, piece by piece, breath by breath. You start filling your time with things that remind you of your own worth: a morning walk, a book that makes you think, a song that makes you feel alive again. Slowly, your world begins to expand beyond the narrow space of missing them. There's beauty in small beginnings. Maybe one day, you wake up and the first thing you feel isn't heartbreak. It's curiosity. You start wondering what else life could be. You try a new hobby, talk to new people, or simply sit in the quiet without feeling broken by it. That's progress. That's growth. Healing isn't about forgetting the person. It's about remembering yourself. When you depended on them for happiness, your world revolved around their moods, their presence, their approval. You were constantly adjusting yourself, trying not to say too much, not to feel too much, not to be too much. But when you start rebuilding, you stop shrinking. You begin to fill your life with experiences that don't need permission to exist. You begin to understand that you are already whole. They were just a chapter, not the entire story. The process can feel lonely at first. When you've spent so long attaching your joy to another person, solitude can feel like a punishment. But over time, that solitude turns sacred. You start realizing that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. It's the space where your soul learns to breathe again. You discover new layers of yourself you didn't know existed. You realize that your laughter sounds different now, freer, unfiltered, real. There's a quote that says, "When you start loving your solitude, you stop tolerating half-love." That's the heart of this rule. When you build a life that's rich, grounded, and full on its own, you stop settling for relationships that drain you. You stop chasing love out of emptiness. You stop clinging to people just because they make the loneliness quieter. You start choosing peace instead of pain, depth instead of distraction. You'll find joy in the simplest things again. Cooking your favorite meal, watching the sunrise, having deep conversations that feed your soul. You'll laugh with friends, dance with life, cry sometimes. But this time, it won't be from heartbreak. It'll be from gratitude. Gratitude for surviving what you thought would break you, and for realizing that the love you were seeking was never outside of you. I once knew someone who said the hardest thing about letting go wasn't losing the person. It was losing the version of herself that only existed around them. She had forgotten what it meant to make decisions that weren't tied to another heart. But slowly, she started doing things just for herself, redecorating her room, taking long walks alone, learning new things. At first, it felt empty, but eventually it began to feel like freedom. One day, she told me, "I finally feel like I came home, not to anyone else, but to myself." That's what building your own life feels like. Coming home. It's not loud. It's quiet. It's peaceful. It's the kind of fullness that doesn't depend on attention or approval. You start realizing that the love you thought you lost wasn't gone. It just needed to be redirected. The same energy you once poured into someone else can now be poured into your growth, your healing, your dreams. And one day, without even noticing, you'll stop checking your phone for their messages. You'll stop wondering what they're doing, or if they ever think of you. Because you'll be too busy living, truly living, a life that feels whole again. That's when you'll know you've detached. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you stopped needing them to feel complete. You'll look around at your life, the peace, the laughter, the purpose, and you'll realize that fullness was never something another person could give you. It was something you had to build all along within yourself. So, take your time, rebuild slowly, breathe deeply, and when your heart feels strong again, let it guide you toward a life so full, so beautiful, that no one's absence can ever make it feel empty again. Forgiveness is one of the hardest things we're ever asked to do. Not because it demands love for the person who hurt us, but because it asks us to release the part of ourselves still holding on to the pain. We think forgiveness means letting them off the hook, but in truth, it's about unhooking ourselves from the weight of what they did. It's about saying, "I won't let this define me anymore." There's a quiet kind of courage in forgiveness. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that whispers, "I deserve peace more than I deserve revenge." It's choosing freedom over bitterness, even when your heart still trembles at the thought of what happened. It's understanding that forgiveness doesn't rewrite the story. It just releases the grip it has on your soul. When someone wounds us deeply, a part of us stays trapped in that moment, replaying it, analyzing it, trying to understand how they could have done it, why they didn't care, how they walked away so easily. The mind becomes a theater of what ifs and if onlys. But forgiveness closes that curtain. It says, the story is over. I'm not sitting in the audience anymore. Forgiving isn't about reconciling, it's about reclaiming your energy from the past. Because as long as you hold resentment, they still occupy your emotional space. Every thought of them, every internal argument you replay is a small surrender of your peace. The moment you forgive, you cut that invisible cord. You stop letting their choices live inside your heart. You stop letting the wound narrate your worth. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering differently. It means being able to look back without flinching. It means acknowledging the pain without being controlled by it. It's the soft but powerful decision to say, that happened, but it's not happening anymore. There's a story about a man who carried a heavy stone in his pocket every day. It represented his anger, a reminder of how someone had betrayed him. He told himself it kept him strong, that it reminded him never to trust again. But over time, the stone began to weigh him down. He couldn't move freely. He couldn't rest. He couldn't breathe without feeling its presence. One day, standing by a river, he realized that the stone didn't protect him. It imprisoned him. So, he opened his hand, looked at it one last time, and threw it into the water. As it sank, he felt something shift inside, a lightness, a quiet relief. That's what forgiveness feels like. You don't lose power when you let go, you gain it back. It's normal to resist forgiveness because it feels unfair. They caused the pain, why should you be the one to do the healing? But holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. The truth is, forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. It's your way of saying, I'm done letting this wound run my life. When you forgive, you aren't saying that what they did was okay. You're saying that you're okay, even though it happened. You're saying that you will no longer allow what broke you to own the rest of your story. You're releasing the grip of the past, so your hands are free to build something new. The process isn't linear. Some days you'll feel free, other days, the memories will still sting. But every time you choose to release instead of resent, you heal a little more. You may have to forgive 100 times before you finally feel peace. That's okay. Forgiveness isn't a single act, it's a practice, a daily choice to live unburdened. At some point, you'll stop seeking apologies that may never come. You'll stop wishing for closure from people who never gave it. You'll realize that your healing never depended on their remorse. It only depended on your willingness to stop carrying what wasn't yours anymore. And then, something beautiful happens. The pain that once defined you becomes the wisdom that guides you. The betrayal that once shattered you becomes the boundary that protects you. The story that once hurt to remember becomes a testament to how deeply you can heal. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest form. It's standing at the edge of your pain and saying, "You don't get to own me anymore." It's walking away without hatred in your heart, because you've learned that hate only chains you to the person who hurt you. And one day, without even noticing, you'll think of them and feel nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just peace. You'll see how far you've come. You'll realize that you didn't forgive to reconnect, you forgave to reclaim your freedom. That's when you'll understand that forgiveness was never about the other person. It was about setting yourself free. Free from resentment, from obsession, from the endless loop of pain. It's the moment when the past stops being a prison and becomes just another chapter. One that shaped you, but no longer defines you. And in that quiet freedom, you'll finally breathe again, lighter, wiser, whole. Because forgiveness isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of peace. There was once a woman who kept an old key on her nightstand. It belonged to a door that no longer existed, the home she once shared with someone she loved. Every night, she'd touch it and remember the laughter, the promises, the warmth. Until one day, she realized she was using the past as a reason to stay small. That night, she walked outside, held the key in her hand, and whispered, "Thank you for what you gave me, but it's time to go." She dropped the key into the river, and for the first time in years, she felt free. Detaching isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of self-respect. You can love someone deeply and still walk away because peace matters more than potential. Remember this: when you stop clinging to what's breaking you, life finally has space to bless you.